Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive into Hajj, the annual pilgrimage to Mecca.
Yeah, and this comes from you, our listener, who sent over a whole stack of sources. Really comprehensive stuff.
Absolutely, covering everything, like the history, the rituals, step by step, the huge logistical side of things, and what it actually means to people personally. So our job here is to pull out the key takeaways from all that material, give you a really good sense of this, well, incredible journey.
And it's fascinating looking through these sources, how they frame Hajj right from the start. It's not just, a trip.
Yeah.
It's presented as one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It's an obligation, an act of worship.
Right, for every adult Muslim who's able, physically and financially, once in a lifetime.
Exactly. It's described as a spiritual embarkation, tied very specifically to certain rites.
So with something this big, this important, where do we start? The sources seem to really ground it in ancient history.
They really do. It all goes back thousands of years. They constantly link Hajj to Prophet Abraham. Ibrahim, yes. And his wife Hagar, or Hajar, and their son Ishmael. Ishmael is fundamentally built on their story.
Okay, tell us about that story. What parts of it does Hajj commemorate?
Well, the core narrative starts when God commands Abraham to leave Hagar and their baby son Ishmael in this totally barren valley, Mecca.
Wow, just left there.
Yeah, imagine, deserted valley. And the sources really detail Hagar's panic, her desperate search for water for the baby, running back and forth 7 times between these 2 little hills nearby, Safa and Marwah.
And that frantic search, that act of faith, that's what leads to the Zamzam well.
Precisely. Water just miraculously springs up right under Ishmael's feet. Yeah. So that act, Hagar's running this away, it's now a core ritual of the Hajj itself.
That's incredible, capturing that moment of desperation and divine help.
It really is.
And Abraham comes back later.
Yes. The sources explain that later, God commands Abraham and Ishmael to rebuild the Kaaba.
The cube structure.
Right. Tradition says it was first built by Adam on those foundations. They rebuild it as a shrine purely for monotheism, worshiping the one God. And then Abraham is told to call all people, all humanity, to make pilgrimage there.
So this idea of pilgrimage to this spot is ancient, predating Prophet Muhammad.
Exactly. The sources are clear. Prophet Muhammad didn't start Hajj. He reestablished it in its pure, original monotheistic form.
Okay.
So during his final pilgrimage, 7th century AD, he cleared the Kaaba of idols that had accumulated there over time, and he taught the specific rituals, the sequence that Muslims follow today.
Right. So that sets the stage, the deep history. But let's jump to now, because of sheer scale. It's hard to even comprehend.
Yeah.
What did the sources say about the timing and just the numbers?
The timing is lunar. It follows the Islamic calendar, happening over specific days, the 8th to the 13th of al-Hijjah,
which is the last month of the Islamic year.
Correct.
And because that calendar's lunar, the dates move on the Gregorian calendar we use day to day. Sometimes Hajj even happens twice in one Gregorian year, right? Though that's pretty rare.
Yeah, about every 33 years or so that can happen. But the numbers, the sources consistently call this the largest annual gathering of people anywhere on Earth, period.
Millions.
Millions converging on Mecca every single year.
It's one thing to say millions, but thinking about managing that, the sources had some stats, didn't they? Showing growth over time, but also big dips, like during World War II or obviously COVID-19.
Oh yeah, 2020 and 2021 were drastically limited. Tiny numbers comparatively.
And managing the usual millions.
Yeah.
It must be a monumental task for Saudi Arabia.
Unbelievable undertaking. The sources detail massive investments in infrastructure. Giant buildings around the Kaaba, transport networks, huge tent cities. Security is immense. And technology, too.
Technology? Like what?
They mention things like electronic bracelets for pilgrims, for ID, tracking, accessing services.
Yeah.
And initiatives like the Makarut program.
What's that?
It lets pilgrims from certain countries clear Saudi immigration before they even leave home, streamlining the whole arrival process.
Wow. So it really is like running a temporary megacity focused entirely on this event.
Absolutely. A logistical masterpiece, really, all in service of this spiritual duty.
Okay, so let's follow the journey. You're one of those millions. You're going on Hajj. What are the steps? The sources seem to lay them out pretty clearly.
They do. And it often starts before you even reach Mecca. The very first thing is your intention. Niyah.
Niyah.
Yeah, a sincere internal commitment. You're doing this for God. And then you enter a special state called Ihram.
Ihram. Right. The sources talked a lot about this, the state of purity and the clothes.
Exactly. You enter this state before you cross certain designated boundaries, the miqat points. And once you're in Ihram, you have to follow certain rules, certain prohibitions.
Right.
Things like no cutting hair or nails, no perfume, no sexual relations, no arguing, no hunting. The sources even quote the Quran verse about avoiding sexual relations, sinfulness, and disputes during Hajj.
And the clothes are key to this state.
Totally central.
Right.
For men, it's just two simple, white, unstitched pieces of cloth, one around the waist, one over the shoulder, head uncovered.
Very simple.
And for women, modest Islamic dress, but ensuring the face and hands are uncovered. The symbolism is huge.
How so?
It strips away everything. Status, nationality, wealth, race, gone. Everyone looks the same, equal. Dressed in this basic way before God, it's often mentioned as a reminder of the shrouds used for burial too.
A powerful equalizer. So you're in Ihram wearing the symbolic clothing. What's next?
As you're traveling towards Mecca or once you're there, pilgrims constantly recite the talbiyah.
The prayer?
Yeah, labbaik Allahumma labbaik, here I am, oh Allah, here I am. It's this continuous declaration of submission, of being present for God.
Okay, so you arrive in Mecca, you're in Ihram. What's the first big ritual?
The first thing you do upon reaching the Grand Mosque, the Kaaba, is Tawaf.
Circling the Kaaba.
Yep, 7 times counterclockwise. The sources explain it as symbolizing God's oneness and the unity of all Muslims orbiting this central point of worship, kind of like planets around the sun.
And you start at the black stone.
You try to. Start by touching or kissing the black stone in the corner, if you can get close enough. If not, you just point towards it at the start of each circuit.
Okay, and after the 7 circles?
You typically offer prayers near a spot called Maqam Ibrahim, the Station of Abraham, and you drink water from the Zamzam well.
Ah, bringing it back to Hagar and Ishmael again.
It's all interwoven. And speaking of Hagar, the next ritual is Sa'i.
The running or walking between Safa and Marwah.
Right. 7 times back and forth between where those 2 hills were. It's all enclosed inside the huge mosque complex now, of course. But it directly reenacts Hagar's desperate search for water. You're literally walking in those footsteps of faith.
Okay, so Tawaf, Sa'i, then the main days of Hajj begin.
Exactly. Day 1 proper is the 8th of al-Hijjah. Pilgrims head out from Mecca to Mina.
Mina. That's the tent city we talked about.
That's the one. A huge valley that just transforms into a city of white tents. Pilgrims spend the day and night there praying, reflecting, getting ready for the most crucial day.
This first day in Mina has a name.
It's called Yom al-Tarwiyah, the day of Tarwiyah. Might mean quenching thirst or reflecting, possibly because pilgrims used to stock up on water there.
And the most crucial day is the next one, day 2.
Absolutely. The sources are unanimous on this. The 9th of al-Hijjah, the day of Arafat. This is the absolute peak, the essence of Hajj.
What makes it so significant? What happens?
Pilgrims travel from Mina out to the plain of Arafat. It's a large open area outside Mecca. And the main ritual there is called wuquf.
Wuquf.
It means standing. From around noon until sunset, pilgrims just stand or sit on this plain, praying, supplicating, repenting, just being completely present before God.
Standing before God, that sounds incredibly intense.
It's meant to be profoundly moving. The sources point out Arafat is traditionally where Adam and Eve repented and were forgiven. There's a hadith, a saying of the Prophet, mentioned in the sources, that says God frees more souls from the fire on the day of Arafat than any other day.
Wow.
Pilgrims combine the noon and afternoon prayers there, and they have to stay until sunset. If you leave Arafat before sunset, your Hajj isn't valid. It's that central.
The spiritual core of the whole pilgrimage. Makes sense. Okay, so sunset comes on Arafat. Millions of people. Where do they go then?
They move on to Muzdalifah. It's an area located between Arafat and Mina.
And what happens at Muzdalifah?
They combine the evening and night prayers there, Maghrib and Isha, and they spend the night out in the open, under the stars.
Another act of simplicity, leaving comforts behind.
Right. And importantly, this is where they gather pebbles, small stones.
Ah, for the stoning ritual.
Exactly. Because the next day, day 3, the 10th of al-Hijjah, is another huge day. It's also Eid al-Adha, the festival of sacrifice, celebrated by Muslims everywhere. But for the pilgrims, it's packed with rites back in Mina.
So they head back to Mina. What's first?
First is the Ramy al-Jamarat, the symbolic stoning of the devil.
How does that work?
Pilgrims go to these structures. They used to be pillars, now they're long walls, safer for the crowds. And they throw 7 pebbles they collected at Muzdalifah at the largest one, the Jamarat al-Aqaba. With each throw, they say, Allahu Akbar, God is greatest.
And this symbolizes?
It commemorates Abraham's rejection of Satan when Satan tried to tempt him 3 times to disobey God's command. It's a symbolic act of rejecting evil and temptation.
Okay, after the stoning.
Then comes the nar, the sacrifice. An animal, usually a sheep or goat, is sacrificed. This remembers Abraham's ultimate willingness to sacrifice his son before God provided a ram instead.
And the meat.
A portion might be eaten by the pilgrim, but the vast majority is now processed and distributed to poor communities around the world. The sources stress it's not about the blood or meat itself, but the piety, the submission to God, the willingness to give up something valuable, and sharing with those in need.
Strengthening community, helping others.
Definitely. And then for the pilgrim personally, there's another step.
What's that?
Men shave their heads completely. That's halq. Women trim a lock of their hair. Tasir.
And this signifies?
This marks a major transition. It allows pilgrims to exit the main restrictions of Ihram. Most things become permissible again, although some restrictions, like marital relations, might remain until after the next Tawaf.
So there's still more Tawaf. Back to Mecca.
Yes, another essential Tawaf is required. Tawaf al-Ifadah, sometimes called Tawaf al-Ziyarat. Pilgrims need to return to Mecca to circle the Kaaba 7 more times.
What's the symbolism of this one?
It's seen as like eagerly responding to God's call, returning to his house after the intensity of Arafat and Mina. After this Tawaf, they might also perform Sa'i again, depending on the type of Hajj they intended, and then they usually head back to Mina.
Back to the tent city again. For how long?
For the next 2 or possibly 3 days. Days 4 and 5 of Hajj, the 11th and 12th of al-Hijjah, are spent back in Mina.
Doing what?
Performing the stoning ritual again each day. But this time, you stone all 3 Jamarat structures, the small, medium, and large ones, throwing 7 pebbles at each one.
Right.
Pilgrims have the choice then. They can finish their rites and leave Mina before sunset on the 12th.
Or they can stay longer.
Or they can stay for the 13th of al-Hijjah, day 6.
Okay.
If they stay, they repeat the stoning of all 3 Jamarat one last time on that day.
Okay. And once they've finished their time in Mina, whether it's the 12th or 13th?
Then they return to Mecca one last time.
For a final goodbye.
Exactly. The very last required ritual before a pilgrim leaves Mecca is the Tawaf al-Wada, the farewell Tawaf.
Another 7 circuits.
Yes. A final circling of the Kaaba as a way of bidding farewell to the sacred house and the holy city.
Wow. I mean, that's an incredibly involved sequence of rituals, movements, places. It's physically demanding, clearly.
Immensely so.
But the sources, they really stress it's far more than just, ticking boxes or physical actions, right? What do they say about the deeper meaning, the impact?
Oh, absolutely. This is where you see the true heart of it in the sources.
Yeah.
Individually, Hajj is portrayed as this profound opportunity for spiritual cleansing.
Cleansing.
Yeah, like seeking forgiveness for past sins, making a fresh start, detaching from negative habits or traits. The sources specifically mention detachment from racism here. It's about self-renewal, finding inner peace, strengthening your faith, and developing qualities like patience and determination through the sheer challenge of it all.
So a personal transformation.
Definitely. It's also described as a powerful reminder of accountability, of the Day of Judgment. Standing on Arafat is often compared to the gathering of humanity on that day.
That's a heavy thought. And socially, what's the impact there?
This is huge in the sources. Hajj is called the greatest demonstration of equality on earth. You have millions from literally every background imaginable, different races, languages, cultures, rich, poor, all dressed in the same simple white cloths.
The Ihram, again?
Exactly. Performing the same ritual side by side, equal before God. There's no distinction.
That image must be incredibly powerful in person.
It's described as life-changing for many. The sources really emphasize how this helps Muslims live the principle of equality, breaking down barriers of race and nationalism. They even included that quote from Malcolm X.
Right, you mentioned that earlier, about how his Hajj experience completely changed his views on race.
Yeah, he spoke about seeing people of all colors interacting as equals, and how it showed him Islam could be the solution to the race problem. He said it forced him to rearrange his thinking. It's a potent example of the social impact the sources describe.
It really brings that point home. And historically, Hajj was also a major meeting place.
Yes, the sources mention that too. Before easy travel and communication, it was this vital annual hub. Muslims from across the world would meet, exchange news, scholarship, ideas. It fostered a sense of global community.
Now, one thing people often associate with the pilgrimage is visiting Medina. Is that part of Hajj itself?
That's a really important clarification the sources make. Visiting Medina, praying in the Prophet's mosque there, it's deeply loved, highly recommended. Many pilgrims do it before or after Hajj. But technically, according to the sources, It is not part of the required Hajj rituals.
Oh, okay.
Hajj itself is solely focused on Mecca and the specific sites around it, Mina, Arafat, Muzdalifa.
Got it. The sources also laid out who is actually required to perform Hajj and some pointers.
Right, the conditions are pretty clear. You have to be Muslim, an adult, sane, free, not enslaved, physically capable of the journey, and financially able.
Financially able meaning?
Meaning you can afford the trip itself, and you can ensure your family or dependents are provided for while you're away, and your Hajj fund should come from halal permissible sources.
Okay. And etiquette tips or common mistakes.
Yeah, things like maintaining good conduct, avoiding arguments, being patient, seeking forgiveness constantly. Common mistakes highlighted include, like we said, leaving Arafat before sunset, or misunderstanding the Jamarat, thinking the pillars are Satan instead of symbols of rejecting him.
Right, just symbols. And there was something called transfer Hajj.
Yes, the sources touched on that. If someone is genuinely unable to perform Hajj due to chronic illness or infirmity, they can arrange for someone else who's already performed their own obligatory Hajj to perform it on their behalf. The person doing it needs to be trustworthy and knowledgeable, obviously.
Interesting. Now, thinking back to the scale, millions of people in often intense conditions, the sources must talk about challenges, safety, and maybe sustainability.
Oh, absolutely. Safety is paramount.
Yeah.
Sadly, there have been tragic incidents in the past, like stampedes, often linked to overcrowding at bottlenecks like the Jamarat.
Which led to changes.
Exactly. That's why the pillars were replaced by the long walls to spread out the crowd flow during the stoning ritual. Saudi authorities invest massively in crowd management, medical services, and security. But it remains an immense challenge.
And environmentally, millions traveling, living temporarily.
That's a big focus now, too. The carbon footprint, especially from air travel, is significant. Waste management is a huge issue. So you see initiatives like Green Hajj camps promoting recycling, reducing plastic.
And the heat.
Yes, tragically relevant. Recent years, like 2024 mentioned in the sources, have seen devastating numbers of heat-related deaths. Rising global temperatures are making an already tough pilgrimage even more dangerous, especially for the elderly or vulnerable. Climate change is a serious factor now.
So sustainability and climate adaptation are becoming crucial. And economically, Hajj must be massive for Saudi Arabia.
Huge. The sources point out it's a major revenue source, second only to oil and gas for the kingdom. Drives tourism, hospitality, transport, massive economic engine. The COVID shutdown in 2020 hit that hard, but projections show it bouncing back and growing.
Okay, so wrapping this deep dive up, Hajj emerges as this incredibly complex tapestry. Deep history, intense spirituality, personal change, a powerful display of unity.
All managed through this mind-boggling logistical effort. It connects millions across the globe to a shared identity, a shared purpose.
Yeah, and seeing that, in a world that often feels so divided, millions coming together, stripping away differences, focused on shared belief and supporting each other, it really makes you think, what can we learn from that kind of unity? And, crucially, how can this profoundly important journey continue sustainably, especially facing challenges like climate change? That's definitely something to ponder.